Let's see.
What do you want?
Just checking how you're settling in.
I'm good. Thanks. Interesting place you found yourself here. I'll give you that.
Back in the cave, you told me that you fought that demon in order to gain control over it. I'd still like to know how that works.
It's complicated.
That's it?
For now.
How did you end up in Barga Gor?
It's a long story. Suffice to say, I've been on the road for quite some time now. Barga Gor just happened to be my last spot before I ran into you. Let's talk about you instead. You've gathered a ton of followers, one outcast after another. Tell me, Tahar, do you trust them?
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Good luck with that. To be honest, I don't understand how you can do it. You have that look about you, and it's driving me nuts.
What do you mean by that?
I've observed you on the way back from Barga Gor. The way you move, the way you talk. I get why other people follow your lead. I really do. You simply have some kind of strange charisma. It's not visible at first glance, but it's there. You give people hope. I guess that's what it boils down to. You attract outsiders, and you get them to march under your banner.
How is that a bad thing?
It's a bad thing because you're too careless. All these people, did it ever occur to you that they're outsiders for a reason? The treacherous orc? The renegade elf? The exiled dwarf? Still, you trust them. Even if you put your stern face on, I can see that you do. And it's why people follow you. But trust doesn't protect from betrayal. But let's stop this right here, okay? I'm sure you have things to do, and so do I.
Interesting. Let's see. Now would you look at that? Let's see.
Blazes, that thing's huge.
Got it.
Damn it, I need healing.
Understood.
Damn it, I need healing.
Will do.
Tiara's breath, we're in for a fight.
Interesting.
There you are again. Gor's new friend. I truly hope he knows what he's doing. Orcs following the orders of a pale skin. That hasn't happened before. But, to be fair, you've given me little reason to distrust you. You did great in that battle against Krell.
Thank you. So you're the commander of the Firewielders?
Chieftain. And I serve Gor, our High Chieftain, who follows your advice. In other words, I'm the third down the list. Mainly, I'm here to make sure our warriors stay in shape and are well equipped. And if you're willing to invest some coin, I might even come up with a way to permanently increase their strength.
I want to train the Firewielders.
All right. Here's what we can do.
So, this is it? Your fabled fortress?
You don't sound...
It'll do. All I need is a good forge. My ingenious mind will do the rest. Though these orcish smiths you've employed so far certainly don't deserve their title.
What do you mean?
Because they are amateurs, and that's putting it lightly. Just give me some coin for material and send them my way. Then I can teach them what a true orcish axe or armor should look like.
Will do. So long, Berg.
Yes, of course. Goodbye! Yes? Looking for some orcish craftsmanship?
I want to buy some...
Music to my ears. What did you have in mind?
Understood. What's next? Gor, how are you and the Firewielders settling in?
All right, I guess. Though there've been some quarrels between my warriors and these mercenaries. But don't worry, I took care of it. And that Rowan promised to do the same. Nonetheless, Tahar, I have to say it. I don't like this place. Not at all.
Why not?
I guess it's the people who once lived here. The Shapers. They were corrupted. And I can feel that corruption even now.
Corrupted?
Yeah. Their customs, their culture. They were completely detached from the order of nature.
How so?
Do you even need to ask? Just look around. Ghost warriors, strange machines, strange buildings. Especially this place, this Nexus. They thought they were above everything, even the gods. And they meddled with things they didn't understand. It's disgusting.
Well, they're dead now.
Maybe. But I can still feel their presence. Anyway, nothing we can do about it. If the Shapers caused the blood burn, I understand why we need this place. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Now that you look at that. Back in Barga Gor, you told me that you think the orc should strive to be more. What do you mean by that? Do you consider your culture to be, well, inferior?
Inferior? No, not at all. On the contrary, I'm glad to be a firewielder and not a human or an elf.
Why?
Because not so unlike the Shapers, your culture is bigoted, strange. You like to tell yourselves you're more than the animals you slaughter for food. You call yourselves civilized. But in the end, you look for the struggle just as anything and anyone else does. But of course you don't admit to it. You want to be better than that. And the result are lies, intrigue, wars, and assassinations. Your culture is so bizarre that it's almost amusing.
That might go for some, but not all of us.
Maybe, maybe not. So no, I don't consider our culture to be inferior. But we've gone astray. Fools such as Krell was one. They're the reason your race looks down on us. If Zakrak had wanted us to be ever-fighting, ravaging brutes, he wouldn't have given us minds to begin with. Every brawl, every battle, every war has to have a purpose. It isn't something done for pleasure. Yes, it can be enjoyed. But at its core, it is ritual. The most basic one of nature.
In other words, violence and war are good and necessary, but only within measure?
Yes, and it should be learned from. That's where most orcs disagree. They claim to value wisdom, but when asked to choose between words and a club, they always choose the club. And as you see, this is why our culture has stagnated. In its current state, there will never be an orc empire, a great tribe, or the earth-shaking horde Zarek envisioned.
So what you want is to lead your people to a better future?
You make it sound so dramatic. For now, the Firewielders are a good start. And by helping you, they will hopefully see that diplomacy and strength don't always contradict each other. After that, we shall see.
Did you always have these ambitions?
No.
Then where did they come from?
None of your business, Tahar. Sorry.
All right. Well, thanks for explaining.
Sure.
What's it like to change form? I've been wondering about that since I met you.
I can imagine. It's exhilarating and strange at the same time. If it taught me one thing, then it's how foolish it is to put the mind above every other aspect of the body. Many people do that, especially scholars or mages.
What do you mean?
Because the shape of our flesh is so much more than just a shell. It defines us. When I take on the form of a wolf, for example, this wolf isn't just me with fangs and paws. It's a different version of myself.
A different version?
Yes. You can't understand if you haven't been there. But I guess you could say that when I'm taking on a creature's form, a part of my mind gets infused with that creature's essence, the thirst for the hunt, thinking as part of a pack, just to name the most obvious aspects. They meld with my mind. When I was young and first started shifting, the creature always dominated. It was like a feverish dream, and I had almost no control over my actions. With time, it got better.
How do you learn a new form?
That's complicated. First, you have to understand that creature, observe it, live with it if possible. It can take months, years, sometimes decades. Then there's what we shamans call the first joining. You have to visualize your shift.
How does that work?
I can't explain it. It's like your first bloodshed. It can't be explained, only experienced.
So in theory, could you transform into anything? Even, say, a wyvern, a dragon?
In theory, yes. In practice, there's no known shapeshifter who has ever done that. Save for old orcish legends, maybe.
Why not?
First off, there aren't many dragons around to study. And even if there were, you aren't likely to survive it. Secondly, transforming into something that enormous, it can be lethal. Our minds, our essence just isn't fit to govern such a massive body. Only some years ago, there was talk of an Ash Reaver shifter who had attempted to morph into a troll. He succeeded, but his heart, the troll's heart, stopped before he could take a single step. So you see why most shifters aren't that eager to experiment.
Well, that's definitely interesting. Thanks for taking the time to explain.
Sure.
I'll be off.
To this day, the Shaper's magical and technological prowess remains unrivaled. One thing is clear, none of
Tahar, may I help you with something?
What exactly is it that fascinates you about the Shapers?
Oh, Tahar, that's quite a topic. I don't mind sharing, but are you sure you want to go there?
I am. Tell me.
All right. Well, where do I start? You see, the Shapers have always fascinated me. They're all over Io, these remnants of a once so glorious civilization. Yet for some reason, so many people are almost oblivious to it. On the one hand, of course, that's very sad. On the other hand, it also makes it a lot more exciting. It's like I'm a treasure hunter, only that everyone else fails to see the treasures around us. Tell me, Tahar, when seeing all of this, don't you sometimes feel like you're exploring a childhood dream? The kind of world the poets and the bards always spoke of?
The Shapers are dangerous. Just think of that Steel Guardian we fought to get in, or the Ghost Watchers. Not what I'd call a childhood dream.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't take away from the wonderment, does it? But this childish fascination was only the spark. The more I studied the Shapers, the more enthralled I became with their culture. Did you know that at the pinnacle of their existence, they ruled over all of Io? A global empire with no one to oppose them.
You seem to consider that a good thing.
Oh, good, bad, the world doesn't work like that. Of course, there are writings that hint at the fact that the Shaper Empire wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, but still it was stable. And it persisted for tens of thousands of years. Can you imagine? All this knowledge, all this art, all this wisdom. Nothing in the Io of today can match that. Nothing. It's like comparing a sea full of secrets with a puddle of muddy water.
My father always told me the Shaper Empire relied a lot on slaves.
What? No, that's rubbish. The Shapers had castes, yes, and it's probably the lower castes your father was referring to. But to call these slaves is like calling, say, a tanner who was born outside a royal family a slave, just because he'll never be a king. And even the very lowest caste, the Zalanir, always had enough to eat, a roof over their heads, and could, without paying a single coin, get themselves healed by a cleric if they needed to. So if you think that's unjust, go ahead. Ask an Everlight beggar which era he'd rather live in. He's not a slave, yes, but in some ways he's worse off.
And how exactly did their empire come to be? They must have conquered quite a few nations.
They had the liberty of being the first living civilization on our EO, at least as far as we know. That made it easier to maintain peace and stability. Until the end and the dragons.
How do you know all this?
Some of it from writings, some of it's just connecting the dots. I know how many scholars are out there at the universities giving their talks about the inscrutable empire, but it's not nearly as inscrutable as they say. Their problem is they're trying to understand the Shapers by reading books and dusty tablets. That's not how it works. You need to get out there, into the field. And even if it takes years of fruitless digging, eventually you're bound to stumble onto something. Another piece of the mosaic.
Very poetic.
Because it is.
And yet, they died out.
Yeah. A great mystery.
Most scholars think it was the dragons.
They do, but I doubt it. You saw what the Shapers were capable of. Even a race as powerful as the dragons couldn't have wiped them out. And you see the shape the city is in, Tahar. There's no traces of fire and destruction. But regardless of what it was, it doesn't change the fact that the way the current races of this world treat the Shapers is nothing short of pathetic. They were greater than we'll ever be. But instead of studying this greatness, we ignore them. And why? Just because it doesn't fit into our religion, our traditions, or whatever reason they can come up with. Because to many, admitting what a marvel the Shapers truly were would mean admitting that our culture is pale in comparison.
We don't know enough about the Shapers yet to say that.
Maybe you don't. I do. In any case, I suppose you found your answer, haven't you? This is what fascinates me about the Shapers. They're a reminder of what we could be, if only we wanted to.
I see. Well, thanks for the explanation, Iskrim. I appreciate it. Goodbye. Yes? What do we need?
Tahar, I guess I still owe you an explanation, don't I? About that bandit in Farland's Hope?
Do you?
I do. First off, I appreciate that you didn't stop me. It was what most reasonable people would have done, I guess.
He deserved it.
Yeah, he did. About 5 years ago, something happened. I was on the road and the sun had just started to set, and I was closing in on the village where I had planned to spend the night. It was a beautiful day, really. The sky was clear, the stars were coming out, and the crickets were chirping. Just 1 mile before the village gates, I saw a woman and her son. Or at least I thought he was. They were surrounded by 2 men and a woman who were pushing her around, tearing her clothes off. She was weeping, begging them for mercy, and her son, who probably didn't realize what was happening, was holding her leg and crying. That woman's screams were horrible. What I remember even more was the crying of that poor boy. They were the tears of a soul who, up to that point, had still thought life was all about beauty, about love, and who had now awoken to reality. Long story short, I didn't help. I just stood there, watching it all through the thickets like some grotesque play. When they were done, they kicked the woman into a pit on the roadside and took the boy with them.
And that was why you tortured the bandit?
I guess. That woman the bandit in Farland's Hope killed. I don't know, but something about her reminded me of that summer night. And yeah, I know, it was a stupid thing to do. Stupid and above all, pointless. Making that bandit suffer didn't help anyone. Neither the woman he had tortured to death, nor the one on the road, or her little boy. I just couldn't help it. It was as if some dark part of my mind had taken over.
Maybe it was your way of atoning for not helping that woman.
Atoning. Such a big word. I don't know. Either way, anything else you need? If not, I'd like to have some time on my own. There's a lot that's been going through my mind lately.
Let's
Corporal?
see.
Need anything?
Tell me a bit about your time on the road. What was it like?
Is that a command, Corporal?
Please?
All right, but I'm afraid there isn't so much to tell. Have you ever been on the road by yourself?
A long time ago, yes.
Well, then you know how wearisome it can get. Sleeping under the stars sounds romantic at first, until you realize that most of the time it's sleeping in the mud in drizzle. Most of the time, your stomach and your purse are empty, and your feet are full of blisters. And, of course, there's the constant danger, especially if you're traveling on your own.
Huh. And how did you make a living?
That was the easiest part. I healed people.
With light magic?
Yes and no. It was my magic that mended the wounds, but since mages are often met with suspicion, how shall I say, got a little creative. Frankly put, whenever I treated someone, I gave them a magical potion to drink, which was just water mixed with some harmless herb to give it color. The rest was laying on hands to help the potion's effect, which was pure light magic and how I did the actual healing.
And that worked?
Better than you'd think. People were fighting over my panacea as if I was Ellen incarnate, while cursing the evil defilers who had caused this war. Ironic, isn't it?
Do you miss it sometimes? The vagabond life?
Well, we're still vagabonds somehow, aren't we? But I know what you mean. And yeah, I sometimes do. The wind on my skin, the vastness of the wildlands, and the fact that all you have to think about is the mile ahead of you. It's another world. There was this one night I'll never forget. I had made a camp at a clearing, set up campfire, and I was leaning against a tree, slowly drifting toward sleep. Then, all of a sudden, it started to rain. Not just the usual drizzle, it was bucketing down, drowning everything, the earth, the noise, the plants around me. My first impulse was to jump up, to find shelter, get my things into the dry. But I didn't. Instead, I saw. I don't know how else to put it. All of a sudden, there was this deep sense of peace. As if all my life I had been chasing something without knowing it myself. And in that moment had found it. So I just watched. I sat there and I watched. That feeling lasted until the sun came up. And then I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was gone.
That sounds beautiful.
And a bit dramatic. But yeah, it was beautiful. I've never felt something like that again.
And what do you make of it now?
Truth be told, I don't know. But it changed something. Even though I cannot say what it is.
You never told me why you fled Finn and Mir.
Oh, well, that's a long story. One I'd rather not discuss now, if you don't mind.
All right. Then maybe another time.
Yes, maybe.